So hello everyone. Thank you all so much for being here today. My name is Gareth, and I am on the sales team here at WineMason, and joined last year. And perfect time to join. Won't talk about that. So I'm just going to give you a quick run through the sequence of events, and then I'll pass you over to Ben, who's going to give you an introduction into Niepoort. So today, we are joined by Daniel Niepoort and Stefano Morello, both from the Niepoort group. Everybody pretty much, hopefully, I think, knows of Niepoort, but you will definitely know of Niepoort after today. And they're going to be talking through different regions that the guys are involved with, different styles, lots of different things. And Barbara Boyle, who's our master of wine, is going to be having a bit of a back and forth with the guys there. So I'll just give you the housekeeping. So everything should take between 35 and 45 minutes, hopefully. And I will be tracking the Q&A. You'll see the Q&A function down at the bottom of your screen there. We're just going to keep off the audio and the video for the attendees. And so if you have any questions, if you could pop them into the Q&A, I'll be having a look at it and I'll take note of all the questions, and then we will circle back at the end and I'll give the guys the questions for Daniel, Barbara and Stefano. And the questions will be anonymous as well, so don't worry about asking the wrong question or anything like that. Just ask any question at all and we'll try and get to them all. So if you have any questions as well for us specifically, drop them into the chat if you have any questions for us from WineMason on pricing or anything like that, and we'll follow up with you. But for the moment, I'm just going to pass you over to Ben Mason, and Ben is just going to give you an introduction then on Niepoort. Thanks very much.
Hello and welcome everyone. Many thanks for tuning in. For those of you who don't know me, well, Gareth just said so, but I'm Ben Mason. We're choosing May to launch our new portfolio, and here it is here. Most of you, if you're one of our customers, you should have a copy on email already. And if you want a hard copy, get in touch with myself and Gareth, and we'll pop one in the post to you. It's launching our new portfolio, and for the rest of the month, we'll be organising a series of tastings and webinars. And today we're starting with a webinar with Daniel. So, for the course of the month, stay tuned to our social media chat and watch your inbox, and more details will be coming through. So we're delighted to welcome Daniel Niepoort to chat to us today about what's happening at Niepoort. And just for the rest of the week after this webinar and kind of having had the chat, Gareth and I will be out and about with some of the wines we've discussed today and some of our new Portuguese finds. So again, if you want to taste with myself or Gareth, we'll have the bottles open. We can call over to you. Just get in touch. We've been working with Niepoort for nigh on 20 years now. And the first wine we actually imported was Redoma Tinto 2000. And actually, I found a bottle earlier today. So I might ask Daniel, this is my show and tell, by the way. I might ask Daniel later. Maybe we'll open it this week, in fact. Another incentive. Redoma Tinto 2000, that was a pretty phenomenal vintage to start with. And I think looking back, we probably caught an early wave for exciting things that were unfolding in Portugal at the time. And if you fast forward to today, Portugal's place on shop shelves and restaurant lists is expanding all the time. So kind of exciting times, we think, for Portugal. For the first 150 odd years of Niepoort's existence, their sole focus was port. But in 1990, Daniel's father, Dirk, secretly made a table wine called Robustus. And if I remember the story correctly, this was against the express wishes of his father, Rolf. So he hid the cask somewhere in the cellars in Villanova de Gaia, and then bottled it at some time later on. But I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that when Dirk made this first table wine, Robustus, that he had kind of started a revolution that would propel Portuguese wines to a world audience and start a new chapter in Portuguese wine. One of the phenomenal things about Niepoort is their desire to innovate and their curiosity. And this has kind of led them beyond their kind of their homeland, if you like, in the Douro, and on to, you know, to make wine in Vinho Verde, in Douro, in Bairrada, and now most recently in Alentejo. Collaboration has always been a feature of Niepoort, be it setting up the Douro boys who travel and showcase their wines together, or with different kind of winemakers doing individual collaborations, be it Raul Perez and Telmo Rodriguez in Spain, or Alvaro Castro in Douro, and many, many others. So there's always something happening at Niepoort, and I'm sure Daniel, who has joined quite recently, will back that up. So Niepoort, never standing still for long. The latest project, and one of the themes for today, is the Nat'Cool Project. And this, the Nat'Cool Project, Daniel Niepoort, who's here with us, is responsible and head of winemaking for the Nat'Cool Project. So listen, let's leap in and listen to what Daniel has to say, and over to Barbara and Daniel for the chat. Enjoy.
So I'm going to say thank you, Daniel, for joining us today. So I'm the third person to say that already, but we're really delighted you could be here, because I know you're a pretty busy person. Just maybe first of all, would you like to introduce yourself just briefly, and what your role is at Niepoort? And I know that you only took it up last year in February, so that's all pretty recent. Well,
yes, hello everybody. Thank you for this nice introduction of Niepoort. It was really nice to hear that. And yeah, I started really actually only 1 year ago, just before this pandemic. And I'm very, very happy to be in Portugal. But before, I was living 4 or 5 years in Germany, in the Mosel Valley, because we have another project over there. We make some Riesling, and that also has to do a little bit with my father, because it was actually quite funny when he was a young guy like me. He also went to Mosel, and he learned there from an old guy, Wilhelm Haag. Unfortunately, he passed away this year, but he was a very, very nice guy, and he taught my father a little bit what he is always talking about today, about the lightness in wines. And I think also there fits very well the Nat'Cool project in that. I will tell later on a little bit about this. Mm-hmm. And yeah, what I did viticulture and winemaking school in Switzerland. My mother is from Switzerland. As you see, I don't look very Portuguese, either my father. And yeah, but I was working much more on the practical side. So less study, but more physical work. What for me it was very nice. So being many hours in the vineyards, and I guess it's very important, because there the grapes are coming from. And then after that, I could use actually a little bit the network and the contacts of my father, and I could travel around the world and work in different places, in France, in South Africa, in Spain, in Italy, and just make different harvests or working in the vineyards, and that was a pretty cool time. But then, yeah, one day I didn't want to travel around. I wanted to do something with more sense, whole year or over years, and then I ended up in Mosel. First, starting to do harvest, because it was very convenient, because Mosel was very late, so I could do a harvest in Portugal, and then in France, and then I went to Mosel. And last year I wanted to change something. My father he solved some big family issues. I don't want to talk too much about negative things, but he solved that, and because before I didn't really want to go and work with my father because it was so much fighting in the family. So I said to myself, I go to Germany, I learn something there and maybe start a own project there. But then he solved that, and one day I was like, maybe now is a nice moment to go back to Portugal, because I was missing Portugal actually very much. I mean, I like Germany, but Portugal has some different.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting actually to us because the two pillars of the WineMason portfolio, if you ask anyone, you know, what we're known for, is Portugal and Germany. So I mean, I think that's kind of quite amusing. But also, don't you think that that experience in the Mosel, given that it's, you know, steep mountain viticulture, you know, Douro and Mosel are really the two great places in the world where, you know, it's mountain viticulture. It's very particular. Do you feel that you know, what did you learn maybe in Mosel that do you feel is applicable to Douro, or are they just so different?
I think it is quite different in also in the viticulture and from the grape varieties, but they are also very similar. You know, you're working with schist, with slate, and it's just like Douro is a few times bigger, so it's like the big brother. But what I learned in Mosel is it's maybe because the problem is it is actually the opposite. In Mosel, many people, they are too scared to have too much acidity, and in the Douro you are actually worried that you don't have enough. So it is like two completely different ways of thinking. But at the end, there are similar things to do to help. And I think I learned a lot in Mosel, but also what it means to start a business, because now it's very different. You know, now Niepoort, it's kind of well known. My father is kind of well known, but when he started, it was nothing like this. And I think I could learn a little bit what it means to start something, because it's not very easy to start something, and I think it's important to know that.
Yeah, I get that. So you had the kind of the space to do that and then take that experience back with you to what you're doing now. So tell me about the Nat'Cool project. It started about 6 years ago, I think. The first Nat'Cool wine was released. You know, kind of why did it start? How did it start? Who's responsible for starting it?
It was it was clearly an idea of my father, because you mentioned before, like the Douro boys, you know, the base idea of the Douro boys of my father was always to do something together for the region or for a style or for something. And I think the idea of Nat'Cool was to show the people that actually a red wine with less color, it's not a bad wine, you know, and a wine what is not filtered, it doesn't mean that it's something horrible and disgusting. And then really the Nat'Cool, it's not something what it's about Niepoort. It is more about finding other producers who have a similar mentality about producing or making wine in the cellar with low intervention and low extraction and lower alcohol and this kind of stuff, and make like a movement around the world. And it's not about Portugal. It's we have in Germany, we have in France, we have in Argentina, and we are only beginning. And obviously, as you know, my father, he's a very busy man. I'm not that busy if I compare to him, but he had the idea, but then he didn't do like the follow up, let's say it this way. Okay. And we want to be now more professional. I mean, you know how it was, or to work 20 years with Niepoort, that sometimes maybe we are not not that organized, but it was always not because we don't want to, it's because we were doing many things. And it was not like a huge, big company behind that. And it's a little bit the family business, you know.
Yeah.
And I think the special thing about Niepoort is we can do very good normal wine, you know, what it's like the classical but Niepoort style, a lot of bottles, but we can also do only 500 liters, and we can do like a Nat'Cool. Nat'Cool is basically the answer, going into a direction of natural wine, but without being super fundamentalistic.
Yeah, well, I certainly know that anytime I ever went to Provine, there was always something new going to be shown. And I do remember being shown Nat'Cool at that time and getting quite excited about it, because I did feel like, you know, initially, let's say there was Rhodoma, then maybe 10 years later, you know, we had the introduction of, you know, Vertent and Charme and Batuta, and then the rosés and the whites developed. And then, you know, then there's been all these projects that have happened, and the fabulous projects, and now Nat'Cool, which I think after 5 years, it's interesting that you're saying now that you want to take it into a more kind of like to expand on it, and put that energy into bringing it into getting more winemakers involved, if that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean, if the winemaker wants, and that's nice, you know. And and I think it's really I mean, Portugal is maybe still a little bit more traditional way, but there is many people, when they see like a red wine and it has 12 alcohol, they look at you like, oh, what is this? You put water in the wine, or it was not ripe, and that's a little bit the message we want to give. Like, hey, it's not only alcohol matters. It's it's also nice to finish the bottle and maybe drink a second one.
So how has the wine been kind of received in Portugal, or is it really just it's been more distributed on an international basis? It's quite an international name, isn't it, Nat'Cool, as well?
Yeah. I mean that was always my father was he is maybe one of the biggest patriot of Portugal, and that's why he wants to show the world how nice Portugal can be. But as Portugal is or Portuguese language is not so easy for everybody, he was always thinking a little bit, look, let's make something international, and then we make the people interesting to put Portugal on the map. And this is for also to make wine a little bit cool, you know, for young people. Like young people are not only drinking gin and tonic and vodka Red Bull or beer. Like there's also, hey, wine is also nice.
Yeah, that's so true. And actually the packaging is very, very appealing as well, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. Do you know who's responsible for those eyebrows on the? Yeah, I mean, and even the Voyeur.
We have now a design team, in at Niepoort, what we never really had. My father liked to work with different people who are designers or artists, and my father also, he's very creative person. I actually don't know exactly. I know. It's a designer not from Niepoort. It's outside, and he made the eyes. But I guess these ideas, they really come from my father. You know, like nobody would put just eyes on a label. What is this? What is saying this? But that's exactly like the idea. My father wants that the people look at this and say like, what is this? Yeah. And then now we're starting to do the Nat'Cool art contest, you know, like using that label and the creativity of other people to draw on the label, and it's been crazy. Last year we did that really out of fun, and we got like 500 different labels painted, from kids to designers to old people, young people. It was really, really funny and difficult to guess and choose a winner after.
Okay, no, I'm sure it's like a blank canvas. That's really cool. I saw some of the entrants. They were very, if people haven't seen them already, they should definitely go and kind of look that up. I think it's cool. And it's also the idea of a 1 liter bottle, which is a very light bottle, Daniel, isn't it? it's
it's a very light bottle, and the idea is really, I don't know actually how it is in your country, but for example in Germany, a liter bottle, they always say that this is the cheapest wine, the bad wine. And we really want to get rid of this, because a liter bottle is actually fantastic. It's better to age, it's lower packaging, whatever, and it's just nice. And you can drink a liter. I mean, what's bad about that,
Well, especially as the alcohol, it tends to be lower as well, right? So it kind of maybe evens itself out now.
It's like in Germany when I'm a big fan of Cabinet, and I think the normal size of Cabinet, it should be Magnum. We shouldn't bottle even something lower, because you need to drink one Magnum at least. So that's a little bit with the Nat'Cool, the same type. 1 liter bottle is good. You need another one.
We definitely need to go to the same party. So do you want, I know you have the wines there in front of you, some of the Nat'Cool wines, and I know that the attendees don't have wines. I don't have wines in front of me either, but as Ben said earlier, himself and Gareth will have bottles opened this week, so people, if they haven't already tried these wines, will have another opportunity to try them. So is that the Nat'Cool that you have in your glass?
Yes, exactly. The Nat'Cool. So that's mostly the Baga grape, not only, but a big part. And it's this wine we do in Bairrada. So Bairrada is a little bit south of Porto, and the vineyards are very close to the sea. So it's a very different climate. It's completely different climate when you think about Douro or down. It's really it's much more humid. It's more difficult in viticulture, but it's also fresher, and it's a very chalky soils. So for my father, I think if you ask him what's probably the best terroir for serious wine, it could be Bairrada, because it's really like little Burgundy or little Piemonte from Portugal. And my father is a big lover of chalky soils, and it's impressive what wines you can actually get. Old wines from Bairrada that are very fantastic. You can also get a lot of bad wines. That was always a bit an issue in Portugal. Bairrada doesn't really have or had a good reputation. And then one day, I don't know how it happened, but I think since the beginning he wanted to do a wine in Bairrada, but it was not so easy, also because of the people sometimes. And then he was like, I have to buy there a winery. And then Quinta de Baixo, that's our Quinta there, it showed up, and Niepoort bought it. And what he or Niepoort did then, it was actually very different than what you knew from Bairrada. Bairrada, it was known for very extracted and a lot of tannins and quite a lot of color wines, and that's opposite. So he wanted to put Baga to extreme of no extraction, so make very, very light wine, but in also very, very serious wine. And in the Nat'Cool, the idea is more to still have something fruity, light and drinky. But if you have, for example, a Poirinho, yesterday evening we had a 2014, and it's really nice, and it's serious. And this, to show that to international people, is always good fun, because it's not very well known.
Yeah, I mean, we do work with the wines from Quinta de Baixo as well, and we sell a lot of Larga de Baixo, and we've seen a real uptake and an increase in sales of those wines actually, and Poirinho is fantastic. So, I mean, that is one idea, but we sell those wines on the basis that they're Baga and they're from Bairrada and they're done in a particular style, and that they're very serious, as you say. But for Nat'Cool, we probably don't even mention the grape variety or the region that much. And do you think that that's part of the charm of Nat'Cool, that it's as much a style, or do you think it's very important that we talk about the grape and the region too? Is there a regional stamp on it?
No, I don't think so. I think Nat'Cool it's very open-minded, and it's very much the style, but every Nat'Cool I think has their identity. So one day, I mean, we're preparing now. We're also going to launch a Nat'Cool from Down, and it's the same philosophy like the Nat'Cool from Bairrada, but it's completely different. And then you taste, for example, a Nat'Cool from Tenerife in Spain, from Suerte de Marqués. It's the same philosophy, but it's completely different, and it really smells like a Tenerife wine, but it smells also like a Nat'Cool Tenerife wine. So it's cool.
Yeah, I think that answers the question, and I agree with you because, I mean, I'm not going to rush you onto Voyeur, but when we look at that, that's from Douro, and I think it's just so completely different. I know it's made differently. So, is there anything else you want to say about the Nat'Cool? Has it changed much, do you think, since 5 or 6 years ago, or is it pretty much made in a similar style over the last 5 years?
I guess the idea is the same. We are more I mean, I was not there, so I cannot talk from that I was there. But what I see, I think that Niepoort is getting it in the last 5 years. It was more refined, even more fine. We're learning also our vineyards in Quinta de Baixo. We started to do biodynamic, but the process of biodynamic it's taking a lot of time, and Sergio, our viticulture manager, is also every day learning, and I think our vineyards they're getting all the time better and better. Mm-hmm. Especially this morning when we were driving to some of our vineyards here in Douro, we are investing a lot in our vineyards now to get them more healthy and also a lot of faulty wines, replanting and this kind of stuff. It's beautiful to see that.
Okay, that must be difficult. That's a big project. And do you think you'll go for certification for biodynamics or organics, or just going to practice like that?
I mean, we have already some organic certifications, but not for all the wines. And on one side, it's really not our focus. We don't like to do it just because of certification. I think my father is organic since, I don't know, many years. We are not organic in some wines because we also buy grapes. This we cannot forget. We are what's the plan for the future? It's because we want to kind of be a little bit example, and the grape grower, they are really nice, but it's really sad. They are always the last one in the list, or the first one in the list. So we want actually to motivate them to change a little bit the mentality, to get them in a more sustainable way. What's of course not very easy, but I think we can manage, and we will maybe get a bigger team in future, because one thing when you talk about Douro is that there is many old people. They take care about fantastic, very old vineyards, and the young people like me, they don't want to work anymore in the vineyards because of it's hard work, it's not well paid, and then they're just going.
Yeah.
And I think we should really invest in that, because these vineyards, they are really the treasure of Portugal or of Douro, like 100-year-old vineyards, and their own grapes, it's really like beautiful.
So Voyeur, which is the second wine in let's say the Nat'Cool. I know there are other Nat'Cool wines. There's Primata, I think, as well, which comes from Douro. But we don't have that at the moment. I think we sold out and we're waiting for the next vintage. But tell me how, I mean, talk to me about the difference, about how Voyeur is made, because I think that's pretty unique, isn't it?
So yeah, Voyeur it's completely different, but it's also in the, or we say it's also in the Nat'Cool logic, because it's six amphoras, and 3 of them they're made with red grapes, and 3 of them they are made with white grapes, and then there is like 6 to 8 months, 5 months of maceration, depending on the year. And the idea is this wine, it's never a recipe. The only recipe for this, it is this amphoras, and then every year we're swapping. Like for example, we do 1 amphora only with liquid, straight pressed red grapes, and then the other amphora we do whole bunch, and then the other one we do whole bunch but stamped with the feet, and the other one we do whole bunch, fill it up with liquid, and we always moving that. And yeah, we fill them, and then we close them, and we don't touch them. That's really like very important when you do this long maceration wines. You don't open them, you don't touch them, and you just put like really good grapes in there. They're healthy to not get any bad result after. And then we take them out. Some we press, some we don't, and then we blend them. We put them in a stainless steel, blend everything together, and then we bottle it. And yeah, that's basically Voyeur.
Yeah. Again,
first one, it was actually in a not liter bottle, and not part of the Nat'Cool project. But then we actually were trying the wine and we're saying like, fuck, we are kind of idiots. We are creating something like Nat'Cool, and we have this wine and we don't put it as a Nat'Cool. So then we swapped and we said, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, and I think you're right, it does, because we've had this wine in both, let's say the 1 liter, which is now on the list, and then we had it in 75 CLs before. And it is very subtle, but there is a real, you're communicating something, I think, with the size of the bottle and the shape of the bottle, in that it's much more inviting and a more relaxed attitude and a more maybe casual attitude in the 1 liter. But it's a pretty serious wine, Daniel, I think, at the same time. You know, it's pretty distinctive. You know, and to me,
I guess the first Voyeur we made, we liked it so much, and we thought it was so serious that we didn't want to put it as Nat'Cool, not to kind of, I don't want to say underrate the wine, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And but then we said, but it's a very drinky wine, and it's a very good wine. And I think Nat'Cool, it's very open-minded. It's a philosophy of being low in extraction and being fresh, easy to drink, but it also can be serious. And that's a little bit the message we wanted to give. And it's for me, it's impressive to have a wine what's so elegant after 5 to 8 months of maceration. Huh?
Yeah, I think just going back to that point about it's still expressing Douro, or it's still expressing, you know, the grapes that it's made from, that, you know, being able to put Nat'Cool and Voyeur side by side and just see how, you know, how different they are, I think is really important.
Yeah, I mean, we always could have discussions with people. I mean, what is a traditional Douro wine? Of course, then this doesn't really fit in here. But traditionally, in Douro, they were, for example, the old vineyards, they are all co-planted with white and red. And it's like, I think we are a little bit showing different sides of Douro. I mean, imagine Douro is, I think, 45,000 hectares. We have south face, north face, we have port, we have red wine, white wine, rosé, and it's high altitude, low altitude. So there is so many different vineyard sites. You can make a lot of different wines.
And just the other question I'm going to ask you, when you said it's like 6 amphora, you know, 3 red, 3 white. So is that, it literally is 50-50?
It's 50-50, yes, more and less.
Okay,
it can change a little bit. because, for example, we made a experiment, or Luis is our winemaker here in Naples. He took, for example, one 200 liter barrel. He took from the white out, just to keep it separate, to see what happened, for us to learn how does it taste, the longer style. So we change a little bit. It's not 50-50, but it's almost.
Yeah. Well, after only 2 vintages, I think, obviously you're still in the very early stages of discovering, what it can be. But it is delicious. Can I take you to another region now, if you don't mind? Can I take you to one of the newest wines that you've made, which is called Sempar, which I love the label on this one as well, actually. I don't know whose hand that is. Whose hand?
Yeah, it's probably my father.
You got to get your own hand on these labels.
It's not my hand. Maybe it's Stefano's hand.
No, it's not your hand. But anyway, never mind the label. So this wine is very special because it's from a part of Alentejo that is very northerly. It's actually northeast, right, of Lisbon. So I know that, when most people think about Alentejo, they think hot, they think very ripe, they think south, they think southern Portugal. They're practically in the Algarve, right? But this is nothing. This is from a very different place, and you can describe it better than I can.
No, this place is actually called Portalegre, Portalegre, and it's like a higher Alentejo, higher special Alentejo. So the wines are much fresher, and you still can get some old vineyards. So I was also a little bit like ignorant in the beginning, like thinking, this is Alentejo, it's all the same. But it's not like this. And also the hot Alentejo, it's not always hot. It's really like a lot of winemaking style. I understood that the last year and this year. But Portalegre, it's really specifically fresh because it's really high, and they are also much later ripe, and you can find fantastic vineyards, like beautiful, and they are all different varieties, co-planted, white and red, and I even found some varieties they are not red and not white, like a rosé, and I have no idea what that is. But there is my knowledge is not so. I don't know these grapes, but also in Portugal you have like 75 different Portuguese varieties. And in every region, the blend is a little bit different, and you have different synonyms and names for the same grape, and it's like very, very complex. But I think Portugal, or like this region, they should less focus on the grapes, because it's the nice thing about these co-plantations is actually the blend, and it's not the focus is not the grape. It's like the idea of one grape is giving me acidity, the other grape is giving me the body, the other one is giving me the spiciness, and it's like, I think that's really like something unique, not unique, but not many places in the world still have this style, and I think we should be very proud of it, and it's also cool to have a single variety like Chardonnay or Pinot or Baga, but there are some areas in the world it's like cool to have that.
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of then harvesting, is like everything harvested at the same time, because
that's like really the key point is like this. I know there is also some smart people, they planting like 5 different varieties in line, and it's not how it works.
Okay.
Because it's very interesting when you check out, for example, you plant mixed two different varieties side by side, and if you would plant them in 2 different places, and the difference would be in maturity 3 weeks, when you plant them together, the difference is still, there is a difference, but it's instead of 3 weeks, maybe 1.5 weeks. It's really interesting to see that. I mean, you need a little bit more feeling for when do you want to pick, but I guess as we like the fresher style, it's not so we rather pick a little bit too early, because we always pick other ones maybe a little bit too late, and then you, in worst case, you can make a blend, and the blend is something like nice.
Yeah, so I mean, as a general rule at Niepoort, you would rather pick earlier than later, no matter what region you're pretty much in. You're always kind of looking for that acidity and freshness, I think, aren't you? That's what I know.
Very, very, very important for us. And it was actually funny when we were talking about Bairrada and the Nat'Cool, and in the beginning, when my father was working with his winemakers, they always were checking on analyzers and this stuff. And my father always told them, like when my father wanted to pick on Friday, he told them, let's pick on Monday, because he knew that they are a little bit later. And then he met Sergio from Bairrada, and Sergio was like, suddenly we make a travel, and his chip was changed. Like, he really likes acidity. And then my father was still doing that game, and he said to him, you should pick on Friday. But then Sergio was like picking 1 week before.
Okay.
And then we really had some very good sparkling wine bases in Quinta de Baixo.
Okay, so really good acidity. That's funny. Okay, that's cool. So we'll have a chance to. I mean, I actually have only tasted Sempar once, so it's quite it's quite different to the other two wines in the glass, isn't it? And in what? Or it's not a Nat'Cool wine, sure it isn't, Daniel. Do you think it's more a kind of how would you describe it? It not being, why isn't it a Nat'Cool wine?
No, because it's not as light as a Nat'Cool, but it shows very much the style of the region, but it's still a Niepoort style wine. So obviously it's not heavy, but it's not as funky and fruity like a Nat'Cool. It is more like the traditional Portalegre style, but in a Niepoort way. So
okay, that's perfect. Yeah. So you have
that's made it's actually really, really cool, because this wine never saw oak, and where we are doing this wine, it's they call them amphorae, and I was like very irritated. Amphorae, but they are actually not the same amphoras that we know. So then they call like concrete granite tanks amphoras, and they're really beautiful. I mean, maybe not everybody likes them so much, but I think they are really, really great, and gives a lot of personality to this wine, because it's gives the wine a lot of freshness, but it's not as sharp as stainless steel, and it's nice. I like the wine.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'm looking forward to seeing what people make of it when Ben and Gareth get some feedback on it. And you have one other wine, I think, there with you, if I'm not mistaken, which I think when I heard of this, I went, what? I thought Nat'Cool was meant to be low alcohol. Why are they making a port? Why is there a Nat'Cool port? So tell me about this.
For port is actually, it has a little bit lower alcohol. So
okay.
But it doesn't really have much lower. It's still 19.5 to 20%. No, but it is Nat'Cool. Yes, we are not listening to the rule low alcohol, but
there are no rules.
The idea is really to show that, hey, port, it's not only something what you drink on Christmas and is a present, and it's something boring and very sweet and alcoholic. Port can actually be a lot of fun, and you can drink it. You just have to, what we always say, you have to serve it cool. That's very important. Serve it cool. And we always serve it after dinner, like with cheese or something like this. And this particularly Trudy, it's Nat'Cool because it's a little bit drier and a little bit more fun and a little bit more funky maybe. The tannins, they're making that a little bit, that you want to drink more of this wine. It's less serious. So if it's Ruby is the same category it's like the category, but you have the vintage port in this category. With vintage port, and that was for me a big lesson. When I talk with my father, it's really interesting because he always talks about elegance and finesse and freshness in wine, in port as well. But if you talk about the vintage port, there is not only elegance, because vintage port needs to have a lot of power and a lot of structure and personality to be a vintage port of Niepoort. So that's a big difference if you compare to a Trudy to a vintage port. And it's actually not so easy to make a vintage port. What, on one side, it's nice to drink, elegant, but also a big, strong, let's call it positive monster. But the Nick Delafors, my father, and Rodrigo, they are the three, and now I'm also there to make the blends. They are very good in making blends, and port is like something of the most important things is doing these blends.
Yeah. So I mean, just while we're on the subject then of vintage, 2019 was just recently declared by Niepoort as a vintage port. So fourth time in a decade, which is great. I mean, we the 2017 obviously got a lot of great praise, very high scores, a lot of great press. It's a very impressive port. The 2011 universally declared, obviously. And what other one? I think was it 15 as well?
15,
I think. Yeah, that's
15,
right.
17,
yeah.
and 19.
Yeah. So what was it about 19? Do you think that it was declared a vintage?
So 19 was very interesting, because you have to see it as it's not so easy. And my father, he is saying very simple: if it's very good, we will bottle it. Because in theory, there is a lot of rules, like you shouldn't make more than 3 vintages a decade and this kind of stuff. What maybe the idea is nice behind, but when you have a very nice, I mean, that's nature. Nature is not like giving you only 3 beautiful vintage years in a decade. So if it's very good, and to make the decision what should we launch because of others, and we were tasting 19 and we were tasting 20, and 19, I would say it's very much a Niepoort style vintage. It has power, but it's very, very fresh and very elegant. And it's like, these vintage ports, when they are very ripe and a little bit tasting like marmalade, like something like this. So 19 is the opposite of this. 19 is very fresh, like cherry style. Maybe Stefano, he's very good in describing ports. He was all his life. If you ask him about wine, he only has port in his head. It's crazy. Yeah? He loves port.
Not only, but a lot of it. I think port. The main thing is in port and in great vintages is that they as Daniel was saying, that they have to be powerful, they have to be strong, they have to have a lot of concentration and tannins, but they have to finish a little bit dry as well. And I think that's the main key that we find in our wines. We're not particularly known for having extra sweet wines, but actually wines that finish a little bit dry. And I think that makes a huge difference without sacrificing the tannins and the power and the longevity of the wine. And that makes it a lot more drinkable, a lot fresher, a lot cooler, more enjoyable, even at a younger age. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think vintage port, I mean, obviously, I think it's interesting to be talking about vintage port and Trudy, I think, at the same time, because really they're, opposite ends, if you like, of the port spectrum. One is just fun, it's easy drinking, it's great value, and the other represents great tradition, great premium, some of the best wines in the world, which are absolutely underpriced, actually, for what they are in some ways. But they're two completely different things, and yet they both have a place at the table, don't they?
Definitely.
Yeah, it's like I mean, vintage you make to be forever, right? It's like we are a port wine house. It's like my father he lives from his father or grandfather, and I live from my father and from my grandfather, and we are doing things for our kids and much more at time. And I think vintage is really the focus on doing something what lasts for the next 100 200 years. Where the focus on Trudy, it's something like port is not only what you can drink in 200 years, it's also something what you actually can drink young, and it's nice and it's cool. And so they are two different things.
But
I think if I can jump in here, just to answer also what a bit more on what you were asking. There's a port for every occasion, basically. I mean, you can have your ports for your cocktails, your appetizers, port with your main courses in moderation, of course. And if you control the temperature a bit better, drop the temperature a bit, it's perfect with a lot of dishes, main dishes as well. And it's a lot, and we're often asked this, and I usually answer it this way. It also depends a lot on how you feel that day, what you're doing, what you're eating, who you're with, and your whole spirit. I mean, tasting wines is a very personal experience, and it's all about how you feel and how the wine makes you feel. So, there's some days you want to drink a young vintage, because you want that exuberance and those tannins, or maybe you want an older vintage because you want that tertiary flavors and aromas. But sometimes you only want to, you have a bit of cantaloupe with a bit of ice cream, and you just want to pour a little bit of fine tawny on top and drink that with it. And it goes perfectly well. So it's not like, okay, if you're a port connoisseur, you only drink, your very old tawnies or your Garrafetas or your Cadetas or your old vintages. No, you can drink anything. You can drink your white ports, you can drink your entry levels. I certainly do, and I've been working with ports for over 20 years. So I think that's extremely important that people lose that mindset. Like Daniel was saying, that port is just, for Christmas or to give us presents or something very serious. It has to become something much more common.
Yeah, well, I mean, internationally as well. I mean, if you look at the way port is going, like obviously, Ruby is maybe more at the value end and sales are declining, where we're really seeing great growth in these and interest, I think, in these premium ports. And I would encourage people to obviously buy both types. We have 25 cases, which you very gratefully kind of are very stole as an allocation for Ireland. So when people do read the reviews, I would encourage them maybe just to think about it. The other thing I'd say about that port is very low levels of sugar, I think, compared to some other years. I'm seeing 88 grams residual, which is a drier kind of style of port, right? For a vintage that's, some people would go like, 100, 102, 105, but 88, I think, is
it's on the drier side of vintages that you find in the market. That's for sure.
And not dissimilar to 2017, as far as I'm aware, as well. So very similar sugar levels.
That's very much becoming a keynote in Niepoort vintages, lower alcohol.
Okay, and that's very distinguishing then, I think, from other houses that are pushing
and you don't have all that sugar masking any faults in the wine.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm conscious of the time that we're coming up close to 4 o'clock. I'm not sure. I'm going to ask Gareth, maybe, if you're happy to. I'm not sure that there've been maybe things happening in the chat, but if there are any questions in the Q&A.
We just have a couple of questions. I won't go through all of them. So the first one was, why is Voyeur called Voyeur? Shed any light on that one?
Good question. I have no idea. Inspiration
Me neither.
of my father.
But we know why Sempar is called Sempar, right? It means unrivaled or unparalleled.
Exactly.
Or
unique.
On my own or unique.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Nat'Cool
is there any chance of doing a red wine in Germany outside of the Mosel?
Of course. I mean, we made one actually in 2015 in Pfalz. Why not? There are good red wines in Germany.
Very maybe a nice Schwarzburgunder or something.
We did every year in Mosel. We have a little bit of Spätburgunder, and we made some Spätburgunder red wine, and then we actually started to use the Spätburgunder to make a pet nut.
Nice to try that. And then there was one bigger question, I suppose, which was obviously with the Nat'Cool project, a lot of the wines are lighter in style, lighter in alcohol, and things like that. Is climate change affecting that Nat'Cool style quite a bit? Are you kind of having to do things to, counteract that in order to keep the wines light and things like this?
I think it's not necessarily the idea or because of climate change that we are doing that, but definitely it's getting warmer and we pick like all the time earlier. I don't know if
we're consistently picking our grapes earlier and earlier. Like last year in the Douro, we were picking grapes in the second week of August, believe it or not, which is something unseen.
It's like in Germany as well. It's not only here in Portugal. They used to pick in November, and now we pick in September. Right? It's like really, it's definitely has some impact.
And I think that's all the questions we probably have time for today, actually, Barbara, if you wanted to wrap things up. Thanks, Chris.
Barbara, you're still muted.
Yep, sorry, I was trying to be good there and keep my background noise off. This one question has just come into the Q&A. Maybe we could end on this one. What are your favorite port pairings, especially for main courses, which is an intriguing idea, and ideas for making to make drinking port more accessible at the table, if there's anything else?
There is actually a quite funny story. My grandfather, when he had a very, very important client, he always served a nice fresh ruby LBV or even a vintage port for a main dish, and the main dish was a pepper sauce steak, and the spiciness of the pepper took the sweetness away, and you could drink the port like a red wine. You couldn't feel the sweetness, and the only disadvantage of this is that you get drunk very fast. But it was kind of the idea of my grandfather, and it worked very well.
The main thing is that we suggest you cool it down. So whereas normally you would serve your ruby ports at 14 degrees, for example, maybe if you're going to serve them with your main course, then bring it down to 10 to 12 degrees, something like that. Serve it really cool, so you don't feel the sugar as much. And the thing is, ruby style ports have a lot of tannins, and tannins, of course, break up the protein in red meat, and that's why the pairing works so well. And that's also why you drink red wine with your meat, so with your red meat normally. So that's a perfect pairing.
Cool. That sounds good. Well, we have 1 minute to go. I think maybe that might be, on a food note, a good place to wrap it up, if that's okay with everyone. Ben, did you want to say a final kind of few words or thank you?
Well, first of all, Daniel and Stefano, thanks so much for joining us today. Appreciate, you coming into our screens all the way from Portugal. Daniel, I know that you had to tear up from Pinar, which is the other side of the river, and get back to the winery in Naples, and you kind of made it just in time. But like I know how winemakers drive. You're like lunatics, so I always had faith in you making that trip and getting to us in time.
I normally don't drive like a crazy one, but today it was a little bit crazy.
You haven't been in Portugal long enough. That'll change. Don't worry.
That's my Swiss side, no?
Like clockwork. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. I hope you got as much out of it as I did. Just great to get those little bits of information that you don't get from reading the fiche techniques, that you only get kind of one-to-one. There's going to be a recording of today's webinar, so we'll have a link for it, and we'll send that to you on email And if you have any other questions, just get in touch with us. You know the channels, you know who to get in touch with. And next, for the rest of May, as I kind of alluded to earlier, we have a program of webinars and Zoom tastings. So watch out for those. And yes, listen, thanks to everyone for being involved and organising and participating.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Barbara, Sinead, Gareth as well. It was great being here.
Yeah, thanks, Stefano. Okay, see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Okay.